If you're enjoying Gems with Shom, follow the show. We're just getting started. Welcome to Gems with Shom, a show about beat digging, production, records, and other things. Today, I'm joined by DJ Agile. Welcome to the show, my friend.
Hey, thank you for having me. I've been a fan from that first episode. I saw you put it up there and I was like, yo, this is fire. I hit you up. I was like, yo, fire. Great. This is made for me.
I appreciate that, brother. DJ Agile and I have known each other since we were teenagers. So it's been a long time.
Yeah.
You were coming up with BrassMunk, very popular hip hop group in Toronto. And you've gone on to do a ton of production work independently. Nas, Kardinal Offishall, Big Black Lincoln, Ivana Santilli. Too many to mention. Also, you've done a ton of TV and film work. You've traveled the world as a DJ.
I have.
So I knew we would have a good conversation.
Absolutely. I can't wait to get into it. I'm actually away from home right now. I'm in Vancouver doing a couple gigs out here, and I come back on the weekend. But yeah, like you said, traveling, DJing, it's a blessing, and I'm so grateful.
Certainly a lot to talk about. So it's funny. You messaged me recently and you told me, hey, you have a new single coming out. And I thought, I should have you on the show. And then I thought to myself, why didn't I think of this earlier? I've known you for years. But sometimes that's how the mind works. So I'm so glad to have you on.
Yeah, I mean, everything in its time, it was serendipity, you know what I mean? It's the right time. I got a single coming out on the 24th with Ray Robinson. And I hit you up just to make sure that you were aware of it, not to try to squeeze my way onto the show, but I'm glad that was a byproduct. So I'll take that as well.
You don't need to squeeze it. You'll be on whenever you like. How's that?
Sounds good.
One thing I'll say when we get into this, we're both from Toronto, Canada. We're both currently not in Toronto, Canada. You're in Vancouver. I'm in New York City right now.
Hey.
And I'll try not to make this interview too inside. Even though that's where we're from, I have listeners. Most of them are not Canadian, as you'd imagine.
Okay.
And when I looked at my statistics, mostly California by far, number one. Number two, New York. Makes sense. Florida, a lot. I found that kind of surprising. Then not so surprising.
Lots of good record stores in Florida. That makes perfect sense.
Yeah, I think Rich Medina, DJ Wina, I think they helped with that. UK, a lot in UK. And DJ Mr. Thing, I knew he was popular. I always liked him. I didn't realize how famous he was in the UK.
Yeah, he's a monster.
Yeah. And Scandinavia, which I don't know why, but I like that. I just thought that'd be cool. So all that is to say, I'll be sure to explain anything. If you and I get into like a neighborhood conversation, I'll be sure to explain it to everyone.
Okay, cool.
You're a big record collector. Vinyl's a big part of your life. Tell me about your early exposure to records.
Well, my uncle, he was like a family kind of DJ, local DJ, like his friends and his circle of friends. So, he would do like rec room parties and that stuff. So I got into records because of his records. He had like Rapo Clapo, and he was like big into anything on Casablanca. He was really into the funk and the disco stuff. So like, Curtis Blow, anything on Mercury back in those days. He was a 12-inch singles kind of guy. He loved Patrice Rushen. He loved Tina Marie, Rick James, that kind of stuff. So I kind of got into records because of his records. So when I started buying hip hop, because, I fell in love with hip hop early, some of my friends would buy the cassettes. And I was like, why would I buy the cassette? I can buy a blank cassette and buy the record. So if anything ever happened to the cassette, just get another cassette and I can re-record it again. That's how my mind was working. I had no dreams of being a DJ. I was just a fan of the music.
If you don't mind my asking, where was your uncle from? Everyone in Canada, everyone in Toronto is a recent immigrant. Typically, let's just say like 80% of the people in Toronto, their parents are from somewhere else. So that's why I'm asking.
My family's from Guyana, South America. We're Guyanese. And so, I know you're in New York, lots of Guyanese in New York. And yeah, so, obviously a lot of soca, a lot of reggae. But my uncle and my mom, and, just because they came to Toronto in the 70s and early 80s, disco and funk was the club music. So they were really into that because, they would go out and that's what they were dancing to. That's what they were jamming to.
Yeah, I'm not surprised you're Guyanese. There are many Guyanese people in Toronto, many Guyanese people in New York, right? Many Guyanese people in the UK.
Yeah, and Florida.
Right? If you add, lots in Florida. If you add up all those places, it's more than the number of people in Guyana. So it's
Fact.
kind of like bigger than the country.
Yeah.
And I mentioned this on a previous episode, but I lived in Guyana for 4.5 months.
Oh, really?
I'm not Guyanese, by the way.
Okay.
And I lived there for 4.5 months. I was working doing international development work, consulting stuff. And it was a hell of a time.
Yeah, I'm sure. You had some good food down there, didn't you?
I ate amazing. I had a great time. I went to the water every day. There's no beach. It's a seawall.
Yeah, the seawall.
Yeah. And I got very into the culture and the food was amazing. I had an amazing time. But whenever I tell someone that who's Guyanese descent from Toronto or New York, they're like, what? You went there? They're just shocked by it.
Yeah, it's not a vacation spot per se, but
oh, it's not a vacation. I had a great time. Great people,
Awesome.
but it's not a vacation spot. And in Queens, there's a little Guyana in Queens in New York.
That's right.
I had a Guyanese friend from Toronto. And when he would come here, he had cousins there. So we would be going, like, taking a taxi to Queens, which is like, whatever, 50, 60 bucks. But everything there was massively cheap. Like, I mean, a bottle in a nightclub was like $40. It was like an upside down world. It was amazing food and it was crazy. It was like a very unusual place compared to the rest of New York.
Yeah, I mean, Guyanese culture, we're allergic to high prices. So that doesn't surprise me at all in the least. Like, we want to get paid lots, but we don't want to come off the cash to pay. We bartering. I'll never forget the first time I went to Guyana as an older kid. I went with my dad, and you've been to Georgetown. There's a place called Border Market, and everything is the price is the price, but everything you barter. And as a Canadian kid, I'm not used to the bartering things, but my dad is like, he's on it. So I'm kind of like embarrassed while he's and he's bartering hard. And as I get older, I didn't realize how much of those skills I picked up myself. Because now, like, you go to buy a car, you go to buy something. I'm like, nah, I need a better price. Whatever the price is, like, that's not my price. I need a better price. There's just something, it's cultural. I don't know what it is.
Guyanese people are not shy. And I mean that in the best way. I mean that the best way.
Absolutely not shy. I mean, you're told from a young age, closed mouths don't get fed. It's not the place to be shy.
All right. So you're starting with your uncle, your parents exposing you to early 80s music. What happened from there?
I fell in love with hip hop. I heard LL Cool J on the radio, and then I discovered Ron Nelson's show on 88.1, which was the first hip hop show in Canada on the FM dial. The first hip hop show in Toronto. It's called Fantastic Voyage, and you could tune in every Saturday on college radio 1 to 4 and get your hip hop fix. So that's where I discovered, Slick Rick and Dougie Fresh and Eric B and Rakim, Public Enemy, Big Daddy Kane, Cool G Rap, all the classic mid to Run DMC, mid to late 80s hip hop. And I really fell in love with the music. It was our generation's music, and it spoke to me. And those were the records I would start buying because, back then you can get records anywhere. So I would, Kmart was across. I grew up in Scarborough at Warden and Finch, and there was a Kmart across the street and a Towers. And I would buy 12 inches there. My first records, I bought Children's Story by Slick Rick there, and I bought Back to Life by Soul to Soul. Those are the first records I bought with my own money. I had acquired other records, but they were either given to me by my uncle or my mother had bought it. But I went to the store and I bought those 2 records. I still have one in my collection. I still have Children's Story. I don't know. No, I have Soul to Soul. I don't know where my Children's Story went. Those were the first 2 records I bought. And I remember coming home and making my, at the time we didn't think of it as a mixtape, but it was a tape with my selections on it. And I remember putting those 2 songs on, like the A sides, the B sides, everything, the whole 12 inch I put on. And there was just something so empowering of like, owning my own music. I felt like, oh, I'm like my mom and my dad and my uncle. Like I have my own records now, and then, it's become a lifelong obsession.
Thanks for sharing that. Those early kind of hip hop songs, classics. I bet you didn't realize when you were a little kid going into Kmart that you were getting legendary records.
No, like, you never really think about it at the time, right? You like, as I said, it was like our music. It was what my friends were playing or what my friends were rapping at recess, right? Like that was a thing too, like memorizing the raps and being able to spit them for your friends at recess because we were all into hip hop. And yeah, you look back and it's like, wow, we were really blessed to have such high quality hip hop like so early out the gate. And that's what we grew up on. That's what fed us. And you don't really think of it at the time as like, oh yeah, you're buying classics, but it's like, yeah, we were buying future classics, and we had no idea. And ignorance is bliss.
When did you start DJing?
I started DJing. There's a gentleman that I went to high school with. His name is Lawrence Nassi Wong, and he lived a couple houses up from our house. And we went to the same high school. We went to Mary Ward, and there was a little record store around the corner, and I would always see him at the record store. And we'd always say what up. We weren't like super tight, but I would see him at the record store all the time. And I would buy records. He was buying records, and a mutual friend. I would make those same tapes in early high school. I was making those same tapes for myself just so I can rock out. And one of our mutual friends, he was a barber. He cut hair in high school, and he asked me to make a tape for him. And I'm just like, bro, I don't have time to make a tape for you, man. It's like got life, I got homework. He's like, I'll pay you. I'm like, what? He's like, I'll give you $10 if you make me a mixtape. So the light bulb went off in my head. So he gave me a list of songs that he wanted, and I didn't have all the songs, but I knew Lawrence up the street, he had some of the songs. So I'm like, hey, Fitz wants me to make a tape. I'll make it with you. We'll split the $10. Back then a 12-inch was like $6.99. So getting $5, that's another 12-inch, right? So he's like, sure. So we made the tape, and we gave Fitz the tape. Fitz loved the tape so much, and he would play it all the time. He was on the basketball team. Other people started making copies of the tape. So the tape went around the school, and people started asking us to make them the mixtape and offering to pay us. So all of a sudden, I'm making mixtapes. I'm at the record store with Lawrence. We're buying. Another guy starts to DJ with us. Jay, he had a lot of records. So I'm DJ Agile. My name's Jay. So Lawrence and Jay. So we were JLJ. So we started DJing high school dances and Sweet 16s and debuts. But I kind of fell into DJ as a fan. Just, I think maybe Fitz saw that, my taste was good, which is why he asked me to make the tape. So I look back and I'm like, wow, that was a high compliment. But I mean, if I didn't reach out to Lawrence to help me with that, and then Jay joining us and that snowball going down the hill, maybe I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing right now. And it's funny how those little life moments, those are like those next moments in your life that, change the trajectory of your life. And then from there, as a DJ, I really fell in love with Pete Rock, because he was a DJ and a producer. And, at the time I never thought of production. I was just in the DJing. And then, the All Sold Out EP came out, and I played that record into the ground. And, to find out that Pete Rock was on the radio, because when I would go to New York, he would be on the radio with Marley Marl. I'm like, that's the same Pete Rock, like Pete Rock and CL Smooth, and he DJs and he produces. I'm like, shit, that's what I want to do. I want to do that. And so that kind of just, sparked my interest into production. And, and here I am still doing it.
So when your mixtapes started getting popular around the school, how did you feel?
It was cool, man. It was, finding music at that age for me, like it really changed. It changed my friends. I really, not that my friends before that were bad or anything. They were good people and I love them, but they weren't into the music like I was into the music. Like I was obsessed with going to the record store, with digging, with being at the record store. Like In America, new music came out on Tuesday. We got that new music here in Canada on Thursday. So going to the record store on Thursday, going to the record store on Thursday was it was like church. It was religion, right? Like we showed up every Thursday to go to the record store to get the new releases. And then sometimes it was like Lord of the Flies in there because, there was maybe like 20 or 30 DJs, but like 12 copies are hitting the shelf, right? And it's like, Midnight Marauders, gotta get it. And, you're climbing over people and trying to get to these records. So having that shift early in life, it really focused me on what I wanted to do. Like I really wanted to do music. And this was like me at 16, this happened, right? So everything really changed and I really was dialed in. I'm kind of that type of personality. Like when I'm really into something, I'm really into something. And it's never left. And the joy that music brings, right? Like the joy of finding a sample, whether it's a sample someone else used or a sample that hasn't been used and you found that and you're going to flip it. The joy of finding that record you've been looking for like 10 years that's eluded you. It's on Discogs for $400 and you're like, nah. And then you find it in the wild for $20 and, you feel like Frodo with the ring at the mountain, in Lord of the Rings. It's like those feelings, those things never change, right? And even on the production side, as a producer, those, you make beats and it's an exercise and it's methodical and you get those special ones and that feeling you have when you get a special one. Cause like, oh yeah, this is good. This is a banger and this is special. Those are all different feelings, right? And you're always chasing that feeling of that special one. They're all related. Like all those things, all those feelings are related. And I find at least as, a person who dived into the music at such a young age like that, I've just still chasing those feelings, right? And when you catch them, they're those small little fleeting moments and it's like, so this is why I do this, right? I do this for those feelings of that music brings, that little euphoria that you get for those small little data sets, and then it's gone. It's very fleeting.
Tell me about the first time you DJ'd in public.
First time I DJ'd in public. I think it was a house party. We did a house party in South Scarborough for Lawrence's cousin. A spot called Mornell Court. So that's a rougher part of Scarborough. He had some family down in Mornell, but it's a spot you don't go at night if you don't know people. And we did a basement party there. And yeah, I think we turned it out, man. It was really, really good. And it was, we brought the speakers, we brought the turntables, we brought the records. It was real work. I think we got paid like $150 for 3 guys to play 4 hours or 5 hours and bring all this stuff. But it wasn't even about the money. It was about like us, doing what we were making all those mixtapes at Lawrence's house. And then for us to like go play live for people. It was definitely different than making a mixtape. And it taught us so much because from there we started doing like more Sweet 16s, couple school dances. And then I had auditioned to Ron Nelson because at the time Ron Nelson was the biggest hip hop promoter in Toronto. He was the guy bringing up Kane and Redman and whoever. If they were performing in Toronto, there's a 90% chance Ron Nelson brought them up. But he was also doing a lot of all ages parties. So, I made a mixtape. My sister knew him, and I made a mixtape with Lawrence and Jay as an audition. And he's like, yeah, you guys are cool. He's like, would you guys hand out some flyers? We're like, hell yeah. So we handed out flyers for him, put up posters. And then finally he gave us a shot and we smashed it. And then from there, he kept booking us. So it was really paying like in those days, you really had to pay your dues, right? And when you're young and you think you're nice, you have a little bit of an ego. So we were maybe a little impatient. We didn't understand certain things like pecking order at the record store. It's like, no, there's 12 copies and that guy plays at RPM, which is the biggest club in the city. He's getting the record, not you. My brain's like, but I'm nice. I need that. You know what I mean? And it's like learning those hard lessons when you're it was humbling, but definitely when we got our chance, like, people started recognizing it's like, oh, these guys are good. And we were good because, as I said, we were obsessed. Like we would practice every day, like, and there was 3 of us. So we took turns with the equipment. So one week everything was at my house, and then the next week everything was at Lawrence's house, and then the next week everything was at Jay's house. So all the records and all the gear went house to house, but we were still at each other's house, 6-7 days a week, either making mixtapes together or practicing, learning how to scratch, discovering music, each showing each other stuff. And, we all had our different tastes and our different strengths and weaknesses. And I think me being in that collective that young really taught me like how to be a better DJ. You know what I mean? And it's some of those lessons from then that didn't hit me till later in life, where there was some stuff Jay was trying to do early for us, and me and Lawrence had blinders on, tunnel vision. We couldn't really see his vision, and he was right and we were wrong. And I think if we had listened to him, we probably would have, we did pretty good. We probably would have been bigger. He had a grander vision for us and we didn't see it. And it wasn't until later where I was like, man, Jay was right. And it's like, that's the beauty of being in a collective. You have people that are going to be better at you than at certain things, and vice versa. And if you're open to like learning from each other, you can do great things.
When did you start making music?
In high school, I went to Mary Ward, and Mary Ward had a robust music program, and we had a cool music teacher. Mr. Jatuk was the music teacher, and we had a MIDI lab, and at the time that was unheard of. So we had like the little square Macs with notator and Roland D10 keyboards. We had a 909, we had a Roland D50. We had some cool tech, and then we had the Ataris with notator and the Uniter and stuff. So I learned on that, and not maybe the best equipment to learn on, but we could make beats. And there wasn't any samplers there. So we were like all learning, I took like 3 years of piano, 7 years of theory. So I have that under I'm a terrible piano player, by the way. I'm not out here trying to pretend I'm a terrible piano player, but being in there forced me to, use the theory, play piano. And, what I found is we were trying to recreate a lot of beats. So like, there's a duo that went to my high school called Middlefield. And I remember those guys teaching us how they figured out how to play Cake and Eat It Too. And then they taught us Cake and Eat It Too by Nice and Smooth. And then they taught like everybody that was in there. So we were learning how to, then it was like, okay, I can play the piano part for Cake and Eat It Too. Let me add in the bass. Let me add in the drum. So we were recreating a lot of the beats. So that was my early beat making experience. It was high school. I'm so grateful that I went to that school that had a music program, who had a music teacher who let us jam in the music lab after school while he was marking or practicing the band, till he would knock on the door and be like, time to go. And we would do that every day. And then it was like to whoever's house now who has the gear, and then practice DJing. So, being in that environment like really nurtured that fire and that fuel for music.
When did you start working with rappers?
It was high school. So fun fact, I was rapping in high school, probably not so good. My brain's probably telling me I was better than I was, but I was rapping in high school, and I won a talent show. And the guys from BrassMunk came in a year after I won the talent show. And so they heard like, that's that guy who won the thing. So they wanted to battle me. And I'm just like, I'm not battling you guys. There's no wins. They want to battle me in the lunchroom. They want to battle me outside. But then I heard those guys spit. And so we would just end up freestyling together, right? That's how BrassMunk started. We would just freestyle at lunch or whatever. And then before you know it, I think Randy was like, we should perform at I think it was the St. Joe's or the Albert Campbell talent show. So we started practicing at my house, and then practicing at Lawrence's house, and performing at talent shows. Making, we would make the beats. JLJ would make the beat tracks, like instrumentals, Nubian Cracker, beat breaks, all that kind of stuff. And we'd put together the music, and Brass, who had a different name at the time, would perform at these talent shows. So we started doing like the talent show circuit. And even sometimes we weren't in talent shows, we'd pop up at talent shows just to see what the competition's doing or whatever. That's kind of how I got into music. And then as I kind of went down more the production side of things, I pulled away from rapping because, when you're rapping with guys who are like real rappers and you stink, you know what I mean? You get the memo real quick. It's like, I can't keep up with those guys, Clip and S-Rock and May 19. sensational, high caliber rappers. And I'm forever grateful to them because the world heard my beats with those guys rapping, right? And there's a difference when people hear your music and, you know, like as great as I thought my stuff was at the time, those guys' bars were on par, if not better. So it's that presentation of like great bars, great flows, great concepts over, you know, some great beats.
Yeah.
And
So for our audience, I'll just pause. BrassMunk, hip hop group, 90s, right? Really popular. And it felt
yeah,
maybe because I'm from Toronto and there's video shows and it felt like a super huge group. So you were successful at a very early age.
yeah, we had a good run. I mean, you know, a couple things for BrassMunk. We're the first group to win the North by Northeast Music Festival. We're the first hip hop group to win that, and it was like a $5,000 payout. And at the time, we were like working on our first record, so like that was like a godsend. Um, you know, we did things. When I look back now, I'm just like, wow, we really did that. And, you know, at the time, you're just in it, right? So you're not really thinking about it. But we had like a world-class booking agent before we had a record deal. Like that's how strong our shows were. Like, and once again, you know, as I said earlier, like when I get obsessed about something, like performance was really important to me. Like the last thing I would ever want, my fear, you know, fear is a good motivator. My fear was to be embarrassed on stage, right? And I always thought that if I wasn't prepared, that could happen. So I wanted to be prepared for every contingency. So we practiced like maniacs. So our show ended up being really good because we put in all that practice. And we would get lots of compliments. And as I said, we got a booking agent. We were out opening for Chaclair on tour. We didn't have a record deal. He had a record. He was the biggest artist in Canada at the time. He had the big deal with Virgin. And we were opening for him on tour. No deal, just because hustle, and we had a great show. And then, you know, we did a deal with Audio Research, which is A-Track and Dave One in Montreal. And they put out our second single with Fat Beats. And then we put out our third single with Fat Beats. And then we got signed by Virgin. So we had a great run. We had a longer run than most independent hip hop artists. And, you know, I feel like the music we worked on at the time was reflective of the scene in Toronto. And I'm very proud of what BrassMunk was able to accomplish.
You should be proud. It was a very early stage of the hip hop music industry in Canada.
Yeah.
And you guys were both popular in Toronto and outside of Toronto. I do think the part that you worked really hard in the live show, that helped a lot because you guys were really high energy performance and that helps you get booked, helps you get out there.
Yeah. I mean, we signed our deal first day of summer 2001. And that winter, you know, we put out the EP in November. And in January, we were on tour opening for Snoop for his Paid the Cost to Be the Boss album. So we're on tour with, I mean, if you don't know who Snoop Dogg is, you've been living under a rock for the last 30 years.
Yeah. They wouldn't be listening to this show, believe me.
Yeah. But the fact that, you know, his team and they were like, yeah, those guys, they can open for us. You know what I mean? It was the highest compliment. Like we really put time and effort into our shows. Like we had themes, we had music for the show, stuff that, you know, we never recorded. It was just stuff we did live. Wardrobe, everything. Like we understood like show business. Like we were trying to put on a show. Like we were trying to be like, what do I want to see at a hip hop show? And then we tried to accomplish that. So I'm just really, really glad that, you know, we had that run and we were well received. And, you know, we sold a lot of records, man. And it's hard to do when you're independent. Like, you know, go on Discogs, go see what our second 12-inch Live Ordeal, go see what it goes for. It doesn't go for a lot. You know why? Because there's lots of copies. It's really that simple. You know what I mean? Like scarcity drives the price on Discogs. And it's crazy that, you know, I mean, Fat Beats gave us a number of what they sold at the time. And we always like, you guys sold more than that, you know, because, you know, when I started traveling DJing, like in Asia, we sold a lot of records in Asia, a shit ton of records in Asia. Because my first times out there, guys would pull up with copies of BrassMunk for me to sign. And I was just like, oh yeah, we played the shit out of Rise Up out here. I'm like, word? I'm like, okay, tight.
Tell me about your production setup at that time.
Yeah, so in high school, I met a gentleman by the name of Marlon Brown. So production started with, like, DJing, I started with Lawrence and Jay, and production I started with Roland and Marlon. So Roland is the first person I met in high school that wasn't from my elementary school. I walked into my homeroom in grade 9, and he was sitting in the back blasting Public Enemy from his headphones, and friends ever since. So Roland was always part of, like, he wasn't part of JLJ, but, he was part of my greater group of friends. And we met a guy named Marlon Brown, who we knew from another guy who went to our high school who was a DJ, and he was a digger. And Marlon Brown put me onto samples. He started showing me a bunch of samples, and just that changed my life. I'm like, this is a sample. This is so we started digging, right? Going to different record stores, Peter Dunn's, Open City, all the spots in and around Toronto, and we started buying equipment together. So we had a Kai S950 and a Kurzweil K2000. So that's what was my production back in the day. When I think about it, I'm like, I probably should have went ASR, but we bought the Kurzweil from this place called Saved by Technology, and they were really, I mean, the Kurzweil at the time was an more advanced sampler, and it had all this like high pass filtering, low pass, band pass filtering stuff. And he showed me how to do that, a little bit rudimentary kind of stuff. And so we ended up sticking with the Kurzweil. So I would put the drum sounds in the 950 because it's 12-bit and it was a little grittier. And then I'd put the music samples in the Kurzweil K2000 because it had like more sampling time, and it had like really great filtering stuff. And there's a producer from Toronto named Alex Greggs. He went on to do a lot of Backstreet Boys stuff and NSYNC stuff. But DJ Mastermind knew Alex Greggs because Alex Greggs did a lot of the early Socrates stuff, like engineering and mixing. So if you look at some of the early Socrates stuff, it says produced by Socrates, recorded by Alex Greggs. He brought Alex Greggs to the studio because he's like a tech gear wizard, and he showed me how to use the Kurzweil. So he kind of unlocked the Kurzweil for me. Like 2 hours with him, I learned more than like 10 months with the manual and, trial and error. Like literally he unlocked the Kurzweil for me. So that changed the trajectory of my production for sure.
Okay. All right. So what happened from there? BrassMunk, you guys worked together for many, many years.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, like every hip hop group has a run. You know what I mean? Like the average artist has a run. Like the outliers are the Snoop Dogg's, the Rolling Stones, the Madonnas, right? Who have the decade-long runs. More than likely, it's the Dilated Peoples or the and I'm not like that's fam right there, Rocka and EVE. Those are my guys, especially Rocka. He was a big BrassMunk supporter, but they had like a run. And that's usually what it is, right? Like you get a little run and then that's it. Like even with some of the great groups, like a Tribe Called Quest, like, they had like 89 to 98. That's a pretty long run. And then, reunions and that kind of stuff. But you usually have like a run, and the average artist life is like 3 to 5 years, right? And that was BrassMunk. We had like a 3 to 5 year run. We had a second album that Virgin let us put out in 2007. And, it was a smaller budget and it was much harder to penetrate. And, the group had changed and dynamics had changed and the sound had changed. And still proud of that record. But, we didn't have the push and the fanfare of like the first album. Like the first album, like, we had like proper budgets. And, like we were on the Much Music Countdown here in Canada. And, we had radio play and a lot of touring. The second album, not so much. So we kind of, like the group's not broken up. We're just not active is probably the term that makes sense. Clip went back to school, finished his degree. May 19 is a track star. He had a scholarship to UCLA, which is why we did so good in LA, because he was out there while he was out there killing it at UCLA and getting his thing. He was also pushing brass a lot down there. And yeah, I'm still in music, and S-Rock is writing a lot of songs and he's doing some production. And Clip works in insurance management, which is crazy. He's like a upper level management guy in insurance, and he does a lot of speaking. And people are like, "Oh, you're so good on stage," because they don't know about his previous life, right? And he, we laugh when we hook up and catch up. And he's just like, "This is nothing." He's like, tried going on stage where you got 10,000 fans screaming Snoop Dogg, and you're not Snoop Dogg. And you gotta turn the crowd, right? And have them saying BrassMunk. That's hard. Doing this little presentation, that's light. So we all kind of just, we disbanded and just kind of went different ways career-wise. But I know, we still have our group chat. We still catch up once in a while, a couple times a year, and we're lifelong friends, right? Like to go through what we went through as a collective. Like, those are my high school friends. Like we'll always be friends.
I'll bring up a song, Heaven, Nas featuring Julie Black.
That was my first major label placement, and once again, it was a right time, right place type of thing. Julie Black had just got signed to MCA in America, and her manager at the time, Chase, he also managed Socrates, and he also managed Big Black Lincoln, which was a production collective that I became a part of. So I had submitted some songs to Julie for her record, and ended up having two songs on her record, and one of them was a song called Things You Do. And she was down in Miami working with, I think she was working with Super Dupes. She was working with somebody down in Miami. And it was in one of those big studios, huge studios. They have multiple rooms, and then they have a common area, lunchroom. So Nas was down there working on a record. And so she met Nas, and, says, hi, my name's Julie. It's like, hi, I'm Nas, whatever. It's like, yeah, I'm in studio, blah, blah, blah. If you want to come by and say hi, listen to some stuff. He's like, sure, whatever. And a few days go by, and then he knock on the door, and Nas pops into her studio session. And so she's playing him some stuff, and then she played him Things You Do. And he's like, yo, what are you doing with this? And he's like, you mind if I jump on this? Maybe we can do like a version for my album, a version for your album. And he's like, we'll do a tit for tat. And it's Nas, Mr. Illmatic himself. You don't say no to Nas. No, I don't want one of the greatest MCs in the world to be on my record. No thanks. Says nobody ever.
Right.
So, all of a sudden I get a call from Chase, and he's like, do you have your passport? I'm like, yeah. He's like, okay. We're gonna fly you down to New York. You're gonna do a session with Nas. I'm like, this is not funny, Chase. This is not a funny joke. He's like, no, I'm dead. He's like, I'm dead ass serious. You and Socks are gonna go down to New York and record with Nas. I'm like, what's going? He's like, get the files for Things You Do. He wants to flip that for his album, for Godson. I'm like, this is a terrible joke. But it really happened, and it was like something straight out of the movie. It's like, first class flight. It was my first class flight. They're like, Mr. Agile, would you like a beverage before we take off? I'm like, yes, I will. And then, you get off the plane. There's a little guy holding the sign into the limo, straight to the hotel. Mr. Agile, would you like a champagne while we check you into your hotel? I'm like, yes, I will. And this is exactly how it happened. I'm not exaggerating. And, we checked into the hotel. The car service came to take us to the studio to work with Nas. And he was practicing for the MTV Awards. And that's when him and Jay were kind of going at each other. So he didn't show up the first night. So I was a little disappointed, but, good thing I was with Sox at the time, because, Socrates at that point was well more accomplished producer than I was. And he really put on his producer hat. So we dropped the beat. We did all the stuff a producer is supposed to do, which is deliver the record. So we dropped the beat, we chopped up, we arranged stuff. Him and Julie recorded the hook. So we had everything waiting for Nas, as a producer should do. And it was a great lesson for me to learn on that trip. And so, the next day we took some meetings at some of the labels, shopped some beats, and then we had another session that night with Nas, and he showed up, and, he's Nas, but he's also very gracious and very humble. He apologized profusely for not showing up and explained and stuff. And we're like, bro, you're Nas. It's good, man. And then we showed him what we did, and he was super, super giddy. And he's just like, I need to sit with this. He's like, I need to write something that I want to hold. I'm like, okay. And he's like, what else you got? So then we started playing him some beats, ended up doing another song. So originally on Godson, I had two records. So once again, Sox and him did the hook, and then I didn't hear the finished version, but they were writing, and then it was time to go, and we he was asking us what we did during the day. We told him, and we were like, we're trying to find weed, but we're in Manhattan. And everybody we know that does that is over in Brooklyn, but we didn't have time because, we wanted to make sure. He's like, and then he starts laughing, and we're like, what's so funny? He's like, here we got two Canadians looking for weed. And he's like, I got that BC shit right here. So then we roll up together. He had BC bud. It was just a great session. This is something like I'll never forget, But the best part of it was playing beats for Nas and having him react, like getting excited about shit I did in my mom's basement. The cream of the crop. So originally I had 2 songs on Godson, and then I think the sample for my second one might have been too expensive. It was a Ray Parker Jr., it was a radio sample. So I think that derailed it going on the record. So then it ended up just being Heaven. And yeah, I mean, that kind of kicked open the door for me financially. Like, I was able to secure, I got a publishing deal after that, ended up scoring a documentary for CBC, started working with a bunch of top tier artists, started doing stuff for movies, which I never thought I would do. But it really was like a power up. When you think about Mario, you get that mushroom, you get the power up. It was a power up for my production career, and I'm eternally grateful. It sold 2 million records. It was licensed and You Got Served. It's the longest queue. Before this, I didn't know what a queue in a motion picture or television show was, but it's the longest queue in You Got Served, which, for those who don't know what a music queue is, you get paid a certain amount of money up front, but as a performance royalty, your performance royalty is based on the length of the queue. So we had it's a super long scene in You Got Served, and Heaven by Nas and Julie Black is playing, and you get paid more the longer the queue. And then BET probably played that movie every weekend for like 3 years straight. So it's the gift that keeps on giving. It was a B-side in Japan, so it got radio play out there. I can't say enough about that opportunity. And once again, it kind of goes back to like being your true self and being genuine. Like Julie introduced herself genuinely as a fan and was genuine and was kind enough to invite him to come listen to her stuff. And, if she wasn't being genuine with him and him being genuine, being like interested to be like, hey, she was real cool, let me go check out her stuff. Like none of that would have ever happened. So I'm just super grateful for life giving me that little mushroom, that power up. It was awesome.
That might be the first major placement outside of Toronto for a Toronto producer. Might be at least the biggest first.
It's an early one. I would say K-Cut has the number one. He did the Madonna joint. And that was before me.
I would say K-Cut is half Toronto, half New York. So he grew up in going to high school in Queens. He is originally Canadian. He's back in Canada now. He's like kind of right in the middle.
I mean, Sox also had the top 10 list, Master Ace. At 8, it was Sucker. At 7.
That was hot.
Yeah.
And Socrates was a very popular artist himself.
Yeah.
But it felt like one of the biggest to me.
It definitely changed my life on a bunch of different levels. Maybe people started taking me more seriously, production wise. And I think also because Heaven is the type of song it is, people hadn't heard me do anything like that up until that point, right? So they didn't know that I was capable of that. And, that comes from like, my upbringing, family played a lot of different types of music. And as much as I was a hip hop kid, I was groomed in funk and soul and disco and reggae and soca and calypso. And those influences like really permeate. I think when people heard that kind of record and it's different, like, it's a 6/8 swing. There isn't a lot of hip hop records that are a 6/8 swing, right? I mean, so there's that right off the rip. And it's very soulful. And, there's a lot of technical stuff in the song, like, and it was because of the limitations of the gear at the time. Like, there's parts of the sample that's moving backwards. And the reason why it's moving backwards is because I couldn't get the vocal out. So it only made sense to extend the note and make it go backwards to get that full length of the bar that I needed. And all those things, I think when people heard that, they're like, oh, the production in this is like this is a song. It's not just a beat. And it's like, yeah, because when I got the soul sample, I tried to make the production grand like the soul sample, like the big drum fills, right? And like the intensity and there's a lot of angst in the song. And I wanted that tension and that angst to be there in what I was doing with the production. So it was definitely like a mic check moment and like, hey, I'm here, and I got a lot of work out of it. So I'm very, very grateful.
Yeah, personally, when I was reading the liner notes, I was so excited. Someone I know is on a Nas record. I was like, holy shit.
Yeah, this is
And
crazy.
yeah, and I remember telling you I was so happy to see it. You're like, yeah, me too. I was really happy too.
Yeah.
So
I was really
it was a great thing.
Yeah, and as I said, when Chase first called me to tell me that like this was going down, I really didn't believe him. I thought he was joking. Right? Like, I'm like, this is a very cruel joke, and he was like, no, I'm dead ass, and it really happened. So shout outs to Nas and to Julie because that chance meeting really affected my life.
Tell me about film and TV work.
Oh man. This goes back to my first manager, Roland's. As I mentioned earlier, Roland and Marlon and we started production together, and Roland just eventually morphed into the manager role. He managed BrassMunk. He ended up managing a bunch of different artists and DJs as well. They had a collective, and so Roland went to the Harris Institute in Toronto, which is a music school for music business. So he ended up going there because he started seeing like the potential of the group and he really wanted to get more industry connections and learn more stuff. And he was really adamant. He would harass me constantly about submitting music to film and television. And back then I had my tunnel vision on. I was trying to be a great producer. I was trying to make great music. I was like, I'm not interested, you know what I mean? But I didn't know anything about cues and scoring and all that stuff. I was a total noob, and I had a goal, and that wasn't part of my goal. And he would harass, like 8-9 months, this guy harassed me like weekly to submit. And then one day he's like, I'm coming over and I'm taking your throwaway beats and I'm going to submit that. And I'm like, fine. So he comes over. I make him a CD of some throwaway beats, and that was that. 3-4 months go by, and he's like, "Oh, one of your beats got selected for this show on CBC called Drop the Beat." I'm like, "Oh, great, cool." I'm like, "You're harassing me to find out." I'm like, "What kind of money we talking?" He's like, "Oh, they're gonna give you $500 upfront, non-exclusive. You keep your performance royalties." I'm like, "So you harassed me for 9 months so we can make $500?" I'm like, "See, this was a waste of time." We do the paperwork. They give us the $500, and I forget about it. We move on. Maybe like a year later, maybe 2 years, maybe like a year and a half. I get this huge SOCAN check. So SOCAN, for those who don't know, is the Performing Rights Organization in Canada. So in the States, it'd be ASCAP or BMI or CSAC. Every territory has a different PRO, and in Canada, it's SOCAN. So they pay quarterly in Canada. So I get this huge SOCAN check. And I'm like, the amount on this is way higher than normal. And I'm like, what's going on? So I check, and I'm like seeing all these, this is back when it was actual physical check and it was paper. So I'm seeing all these country codes that I've never seen before where the song's getting played. And it's like, I'm like, what song is this? So I look at the song and I don't recognize the name of the song. So I'm like, oh shit, they're applying someone else's royalties to me by mistake. I better call them before I have to pay this shit back later, right? Because some people be like, oh, take the money and run. I'm like, it's a PRO. They're gonna.
It's a very Canadian response. That's what I'll say. You're a good guy.
It's a smart response because I'm like, there's no way that they're gonna give me this much money by mistake and then not take it back. There's no like, oh, you can have that. You know what I mean? So they're gonna take it out of my future royalties, right? So I call them and I'm like, hey, I think there's an error on my royalties. And they're like, so they're going through it with me and they're like, oh, it's this song, blah, blah, blah. I'm just like, I don't have a song like that. They're like, yeah, it's in this show called Drop the Beat. And I'm like, what? And going back, they were throwaway beats. So when I signed the paperwork, I just made up a random name because what's the name of the composition? So I made up a random name at the time just to get my $500. And then I realized that, oh, the check was from that song. And then once again, learning about cues, and it was a big cue for that. They used the beat as a big cue. And then I learned about broadcasting and rebroadcasting. And I was like, I need to learn about this. So I literally went into like learning about how music publishing works, how broadcasting works, how film and television works. And I'm like, I understood that this is a very lucrative avenue, you know, if I can get my music to the right people. So I apologize to Roland. You know what I mean? Like, obviously I had to give him his piece as my manager, but it really opened my eyes to the world of film and television. And as I said, that was a throwaway beat, and that made way more money than the stuff I was pouring my heart and soul into. Because, you know, if you're not on FM radio or on TV or in movies or at, you know, you weren't making a ton of performance rights royalties, right? Unless you were touring heavy and you were doing like major arenas, which eventually happened. But, you know, this is right before all that Snoop stuff. And it really kind of opened my eyes. What that did was made me learn about music publishing, because I knew about publishing and I had my stuff registered, but I didn't really know about publishing. And, you know, so much so now that I ended up working as a board member of the SOCAN Foundation. Like, I went from like minimal publishing knowledge to like, I'm like, I really need to know about this, because if I'm getting checks like this, I need to know about this. And once again, it's that life-changing moment. Like, if Roland wasn't harassing me to do that throwaway beat, I wouldn't have understood sync. And sync is, for a music producer or a songwriter, sync is so important. And there's tons, in the modern era, there's tons of scams. People want to buy you out of your royalties, give you a flat fee, all sorts of bullshit. Really take the time, and, you know, YouTube is a great resource out there. There's lots of books. I had to go to the library and borrow books back then to learn about it. You can watch maybe 3 to 5 hours of music publishing on YouTube and really be up to speed. But it's so important, because sync, I mean, the money you can make from sync is...
It's funny how life works. I think, you know, like you said, you poured your heart and soul to some things, didn't always make a lot of money. You made underground music.
Music, yeah.
Yeah.
So when you go from like royalty checks that are like $300-$400 every quarter to seeing 5 figures, you're like... That's why I immediately thought, like, you know, I don't know this song. They put the wrong song, and that's happened before, where they've applied my SOCAN number, say, is 1 2 3 4 5 6, and then yours is 5 7, and they put 6 by accident, and then for some reason on one song I'm getting yours. That happens, right? So I didn't want that to be a thing, but lucky it wasn't a thing. And then, as I said, it kind of like opened my eyes to the possibility of sync. And then, as I said, you know, I went on to, you know, I've done 2 seasons of Hip Hop Evolution. I did the music in seasons 3 and 4. There's some stuff coming up that I can't talk about, but I'm 1000% sure everybody who watches and listens to your pod will absolutely be watching this documentary. And I got stuff in there. Yeah, there's these little dolls called Brats. They had a movie back in the day. I did music in there. Like, I got music in random film and television things. So I got a lot of stuff on Teletoon and children's shows stuff. That, like, it opened my mind. And to be honest, that stuff made me a better music producer, right? Because working in sync is totally different than working, like, making a song. Like, in sync, your accompaniment, the focal is the dialogue or the actor or person on screen or the object or whatever. And you're the background, you're there to accompany it. So it teaches you how to play a different role, which then taught me different skills as a producer. Like, how do I make stuff more subtle but still create theme, right? And then you put that into a beat and you can still do that. And maybe, how do I create more space but still create theme for the singer or the rapper? It made me a better producer. I won't lie, because it fires up different muscles in your brain that I would have never been firing up had I not done any film and television work.
It's 2026. In the past few years, you've been traveling the world as a DJ. So a new phase. How has that changed you as a person?
I'll wait till the siren rolls by.
It's all good. That's a Vancouver, British Columbia siren.
That's right. It's hot out here. So I had put DJing down. Like I was really in my producer bag. You know, if I'm keeping it a buck with you, I love producing. That's my first love. Like I really, really like DJing. Like I love it a little bit. I don't hate it. I love it a little bit. And the high you get when you're rocking a party is almost as good as the high you get when you make something and you know you got something special in the studio, like creating. And whether that's a mashup, a edit, a remix, original piece of work, whatever it is, there's just something special when it's just you, maybe the person or people that you're collaborating with, and you kind of look at each other and you know like you got something, or maybe it's just you solo. It's a special moment. But DJing is right there. It's close. This is photo finish, right? But I had put the DJing down because I really wanted to stay in the studio as much as possible. But then when things slowed down after the Big Black Lincoln record, after the first Brass record, this is like 06, music really started changing. And what I did naturally as a producer wasn't in vogue anymore, right? Like there was a few artists still doing that style of music, like the Kanyes and the Commons and stuff. But Gone was like all that. We came out in 99. Like that was like indie rap, right in the middle of indie rap, like Lil Brother, everybody, Mos Def, Talib. We were like right in the middle of that. And that sound was not in vogue anymore, right? Like a few artists were still doing that per se, but the popular sound was more like the Young Jock and like it was very the Lil Jon stuff, very keyboard, drum machine heavy, 808 heavy. And that's not what I was doing at the time. So I was a little mad at music that they didn't have a space for me anymore. And I was like, what do I do? And I was like, well, let me pick up DJing. But at the time I was like, I don't want to DJ clubs. I just want to do stuff that I want to do. So I started playing at this little spot in Toronto called In the Mood, where if you've ever watched New York Undercover, it was like the Toronto version of that. We had live music and then me DJ. So, you know, I was playing Marvin Gaye and Roberta Flack, like shit I want to hear. Right. And we had like Melanie Fiona perform there and Jenny Laws and Glenn Lewis and Natalie Portman had her birthday party In the Mood. Like it was popping. We turned it into something. Right. I owe the owner of the spot, his name is Brooklyn, and I owe Brooklyn a great debt because he got me back into DJing. I think that was the perfect way. Like it brought me back playing the stuff I wanted to hear. Like, I'm playing Foreign Exchange and, Dilla and stuff that I want to hear. And people were dancing. And I was just like, okay, there's a spot for me. And then opportunities started popping up out of that. And I was still making music, but I wasn't, as I said, I was a little mad at music. So I'd make stuff and like not save it. Just, I was going through whatever I was going through, and I realized now that was probably like it was therapy for me. But the DJing like still kept me grounded in the music, right? And it still kept income going. And what that did was expand my horizons, not only as a producer, just I started getting gigs. And, as I would play the gigs, the asks were getting greater, right? It was taking me out of my comfort zone and now maybe playing for a little bigger pond. Maybe stuff that, some of the stuff you like, but some of the stuff you're not really into. And I had to learn how to play those rooms again, right? Because I hadn't done that kind of stuff since like the mid-90s, late 90s, before BrassMunk blew up. And I was learning how to like be in the moment with everybody. Because I'll remember, so I went to Vietnam with Scratch Bastard. Smirnoff flew us out there. There was the thing called the Smirnoff Nightlife Exchange. So it was my first time in Asia DJing. Yeah, it was my first time in Asia DJing. So we went to Hong Kong and then to Ho Chi Minh City. Crazy. They had us in this big stadium. Like as I said, I started getting like great opportunities. I got an opportunity to do some stuff with the Raptors. I don't want people to think I went from a little club to to Vietnam to a stadium like overnight. I did like the Raptors hit the playoffs for the first time. This is the Chris Bosh era. And I did a block party outside. Shout out my homie Four Corners. He did the first one, but the transition of him doing the first It was game 3, and the transition of him doing the block party, then going back into the stadium to rock the game. It was too hard. So they were like, well, who should we get? He's like, get Agile. So I did that block party for game 4, and I smashed it. And ever since then, like MLSE started plugging me and doing Leaf stuff, doing Raptor stuff. For the longest, I'm kind of like the unofficial backup DJ for Four Corners. Like I do a ton of Raptors games. So I started doing bigger and bigger stuff. I did the MLS All-Star game here in Toronto. Estelle was the headliner. And this is when American Boy was top of the charts. So like I started doing like really, really big gigs. And so I started playing more pop music, more dance music. Be More was in back then. Like Be More was trending. And of course, if you're in Toronto, you got to play hip hop, reggae, soca. That's R&B. It's mandatory. House music, of course. So we went to Vietnam, and we're doing a stadium, and I'm playing like, Dave Guetta. I'm playing like all these big festival stuff. Everybody's going crazy. I got a nice little clip of it on my IG if you want to see what it was like. But, I'm jumping with the crowd and stuff. Like, I'm playing a joint, I'm running out, I'm hyping them up, all sorts of stuff. Bastard does his set. I come out, I hype up his set a little bit. And, I get back to the hotel and I was like, I didn't love that. I liked it, but I didn't love that. I'm just like, there's a disconnect. At the time, I didn't know how to fully like be in that moment when I'm playing that music. Like, okay, I don't play that in my car. It's definitely not in my headphones when I'm going for a walk. But I had to learn to like that stuff when I'm playing that stuff. Because when you're the DJ, you're the maestro. Like how I go is how the crowd goes. If I'm mellow and I'm chilling and I'm playing mellow stuff, it's going to be a mellow night. If I'm hype and I'm into it and it's going to be a hype night. And, people, they're flying you across the world. They want a show, right? So getting back to practicing for the show. So I had to practice and learn like to get into the music. And I was like, okay, this is something I could do because there's something in the music that's connecting with them. I have to find out what that is so it can connect with me. So I just figured out the only way for me to do that is to try to learn how to make this stuff, right? So then it was the challenge of like, a lot of people, oh, I can do that. Oh, that's so simple. I could do that. Oh, I heard Chainsmokers. Oh, that's super simple. I could do that. Oh, yeah, really? There's a bunch of stuff going on that you don't know. You know what I mean? And it was learning how to make that stuff and not learning how to make it. And it was authentic. If I played it for someone from that world, would they be like, bro, that's a hip hop snare. What are you doing? Like, that's not what we do over here. And it was learning how to like get it to that level. And once I was able to do that, then I understood how the music worked. Then I understood, and then I learned how to love it. Then I would fall in love with like groups like Data Life and producers like Switch and all these like hard EDM house guys that were doing incredible stuff. And, my respect for it changed, right? It wasn't just like party music that I was playing. I had learned how to make it and appreciate it. And it's not my go-to, and that's not what I gravitate towards. That's not what I do. But I took that journey so I could understand how to play it. And that was the key. It was like understanding how to play it, how to connect with it. So it made me a better producer because it taught me a bunch of tricks that, that I brought over to what I do. And it made me a better DJ because now I understand, now I know how to play for a crowd. I could play a top 40 party and have fun, you know what I mean? And then I could go play an underground party, and whether I'm playing like People Under the Stairs or, Black Alicious or like go deep there and like that's my home and have fun and have the same level of fun, right? And that's the key, like that same authentic fun, like have the same fun that when I was playing Sabrina Carpenter, like, and just understood, what I had to teach myself was there's different levels and you can be happy at every different level. Like everything doesn't have to be like, breakbeat, underground, dirty, dusty joint. Like that's special and you can hold that and that could be you. And you can still go out and, go through the drive-through and be content. It's okay. You know what I mean? Like,
of course it's okay.
Maybe not drive through every day. That's not healthy. But like when you're called upon to do that, you can still do that and be authentic and still be yourself, right? Like I can still be that hip hop guy, but don't get me in that top 40 room because I'll play top 40 like they haven't heard, and it's going to be a problem, you know, man. And that's what happens, right? Like people hear and they're like, wow, you're really good. And I'm doing all the hip hop stuff. I'm keeping it in key. I'm adding cuts. I'm doing all the hip hop stuff, but it's maybe pop music or maybe dance music. And I'm still authentically me. And I've learned to have fun with it. But that was a great learning lesson traveling the world, because I realized when I'm the only one in the room not super connected, it's a problem. And it taught me how to like connect. And it changed my perspective on making music and playing music.
You're a working artist for years. From where you started as a teenager, the fact that you're doing it now and you're successful and popular now, that's important. And you've adjusted and navigated your career to keep it going. Very few people have that at all. So I want to commend you. And that's life as an artist. You gotta make it work and keep your creativity and enjoy it. And the fact that you've done that says a lot about you.
Yeah. And, you know, I had to realize too, like, not everybody gets to be Primo. Not everybody gets to be Pete Rock. Like, Primo gets to be Primo because, you know, he's a one of one. You know what I mean? Like, he's on the Mount Rushmore of 99.9% of hip hop producers from my era. You know what I mean? And we need to treasure him and hold him to that high standard. But if everybody was Primo, you know, like he's a one of one, right? And yeah. So he gets that career, but that's not for everybody. And everybody's career is going to be unique and different. And you have to navigate, you know, what's given to you. And, you know, a buddy of mine who's like a life coach and stuff, he talks about gratefulness and humbleness and acceptance. And he's like, you know, gratefulness is a superpower. And I could be like, oh, well, you know, I didn't get that career, you know, to be that hip hop guy that I always wanted to be. And then I'd be missing like all these blessings on this side and all these lanes that have opened up because I'm not that guy. You know what I mean? And I have the skill set to not be that guy. I'm super blessed to recognize that. And like you said, like, you know, music changes. Like that's the only thing that's a constant. Like, you know, the records your parents listen to isn't the records that their parents listen to. And it's not going to be the records your kids listen to. There's going to be some similarities and there's going to be some artists that are through. You know, we're all going to listen to Chuck Berry. We're all going to listen to MJ. But, you know, are my parents going to listen to Little Uzi Vert? Probably not. You know, are my great grandkids going to listen to Little Uzi Vert? Maybe not. And I'm not throwing shade at Little Uzi Vert because I like Little Uzi Vert and I listen to Little Uzi Vert. But I'm saying there isn't through artists all the time. And sometimes you're not that through artist. And when you're an artist, you have to understand, okay, I'm here, right? And I have to change with the times. And I realized I'm a producer and a DJ, and I could pivot and move and do both and move with the times. And I'm so grateful that I was able to do that, because there's a lot of people that started when I started that weren't able to do that. And they had their run and their run's over, and now they're doing something else.
Almost none of them.
Yeah, and maybe they're happy doing that, but like, you know, you'll see a few, like there's still a few out there that, you know, producer DJs that, you know, they've learned to, you know, become party rockers, right? Like they can play the chin scratcher rooms for the guys that want to hear the obscure, deepest cuts from your collection, and then they can go play another room where people want to turn up and just have a good time, and we're not getting that deep musically. You know, to have both sides of my brain working like that, I feel so blessed that I was able to spot that when it happened and grow as an artist.
For our next segment, it's called Drop a Gem on 'em. It's a word association game. I'll name a person, place, thing, song. You tell me what comes to mind. It could be a feeling, experience, personal story, anecdote, really anything.
Okay.
Rough Draft album, J Dilla, Nothing Like This.
Oh, I was still smoking weed during that era, so I zoned out to that easily 150 times. Easy. I absolutely, like, it was one of, like, you know, Dilla's on my Mount Rushmore, and he always amazed me where he was able to pull samples from. Like, wherever you're digging, he's like, I'm not digging there, I'm digging over there. And that was one of those ones where I was just like, what is this? And why do I love it so much? And why are the drums so ambient? but slapping. How are you doing this, Dilla? So yeah, love that song. That reminds me of smoking a lot of weed.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like you're hydroplaning, you're flying.
And it was perfect for that.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. It's an incredible song because it's also genre bending. I feel like he's left like the regular hip hop world in that one.
Yeah.
It's an incredible song.
And he's singing on it. It's like this cool prog rock sample.
Yeah.
Just super sick.
Tell me about the relationship between Toronto and Jay Dilla.
Oh man. Well, I think because we were so early, like on the Slum Village stuff, they weren't ready for how we received them. Because, you know, for those who went to that first Slum Village show at the Comfort Zone, you could see in their faces how surprised they were that everybody in the room knew every word. And they pulled up a couple songs because they were just like, they weren't ready. I don't think that because, you know, Fantastic Voyage, you know, everybody had a terrible 8th generation copy of that record before it even came out. And we still all went and bought it. And, you know, that's the power of music. Like even when you have a sonically poor copy, if the composition is fire, it will translate past, you know, the poor copy, and people will listen through a poor quality recording when the music is that great. And, you know, I don't know if it was Mr. Attic or Moss or RC who brought that back from the States originally. I know it was one of those three that deserve all the credit for. I think I got my copy from DJ P Plus because he played it for me in his car, and I'm like, there's no way I'm leaving this car without a copy of this. You know, we were outside my house. I'm like, there's no way. I'm like, you're either, I'm going to be in your car forever or I'm getting a copy of this. And then obviously all the brass guys got it. Yeah, I mean, I think because they kind of came in like that, it was hand to hand, and music people gravitated towards it and really loved it. They created like a cult following, and they'll be the first ones to tell you when they came to Toronto, they were absolutely blown away. And then they came multiple times, multiple shows. One of my greatest achievements as an artist was meeting Dilla for the first time at Roxy Blue. Much Music was, he was there with Frank and Dank. DJ P Plus was playing. Frank and Dank was there. Much Music was interviewing him, and P Plus played Imagine by BrassMunk. This is on vinyl. This is vinyl. So that's the first song off the first BrassMunk album. And remember, I'm not like, Dilla's over here being interviewed by Much Music. I'm over here, and DJ P Plus is in the middle, like here, right? He plays Imagine. Dilla stops the interview, goes over to P Plus and says, "What's that?" And P Plus just points to me. Dilla stopped the interview to ask DJ P Plus, "What song is that?" And it was my song playing. I was like, okay, I'm done here. I don't need to do anything else in music. The GOAT is interested in, like, because I had just met him, right? But, and you know, like, they're like, introduced me, hey, this is DJ Agile, he's part of BrassMunk, yada, yada. You know, he's producer or whatever. But I wasn't like trying to give him my resume or my CV, whatever. I was just trying to keep it humble, be like, you know, appreciate the music, appreciate the inspiration. And he was cool as fucking, you know, keep it moving. And then for that to happen, like 45 minutes later, I'm just chilling in the cut. Imagine comes on. And then he stops the interview, walks over, and P Plus just points to me. And I was just like, I couldn't have scripted this any better. This is unplanned, and this was a very humbling moment, because like, to get a nod from that guy, man, that's the highest compliment. You know what I mean? And like I said, you know, he was just like, dope. And it's like, yo, I like that. After he's like, yo, I like that track. I'm like, sounds like you. And he laughed.
Salute. You could put that on your gravestone in, you know, 100 years.
That's
100
like,
years from now.
That's one of my highlights. That's top of the tops. Like, I got a nod from Dilla.
Next artist, Kardinal Offishall.
That's my big bro right there. I mean, for those who don't know, I'm his official DJ. So we do shows and stuff. But beyond that, like, we're family. You know what I mean? Like, we roast each other. My son calls him Uncle Cardi. His kids are beautiful. His wife's great. And we just have it's a brotherhood. Like, you know, what I love about him, he's really a good community leader. He's so good for hip hop in our city. He's really like the stuff he does. He's really about it. Like he's really about like his initiatives, raising money. Like it's not an act. He's not doing it for fanfare. He's not doing it like he's really that guy. And he does so much stuff behind the scenes. He's a real leader. As I said, he's my brother, his big brother, but he's a real leader, man. He's top of the tops.
Tell us about your new single.
Between the Sheets. It is a cover of the Isleys In Between the Sheets. Little backstory. I've done covers before. I've never released a cover. So this is my first time releasing a cover. It's DJing a speakeasy in Toronto. And it's a speakeasy that they let me play whatever I want. So I still do those small rooms that let me play whatever I want because it keeps me grounded and keeps me creative. So I'm playing The Most Beautifulest Thing in This World by Keith Murray. The Brother Sample.
You really are playing whatever you want.
Yeah. So I'm playing that, and it's Isley Brothers sample with Detroit Emerald's drum loop on top with some mountain voice samples and other voice samples.
You out there?
Eric Sermon, you know, one of the most unheralded. He needs to get more props. He's one of the great producers. He's
Brother, I'll just pause this. I've been in touch with Eric Sermon, and he's a great guy, and I'm trying to get him on the show. And he's hard to organize scheduling, but yes. I'm determined to get the Green-Eyed Bandit on this show.
You need to get him. I was marveling at two things. One thing I love about E-Double as a producer, he is like one of the kings of like making you feel stupid for not fucking with the obvious. Like, it's obvious drum loop, it's obvious vocal samples, obvious sample. All he does is low pass filter it. And then he takes this love song and turns it into a grimy, mean mugging song with Murray on it, right? And I'm like, it's a testament to two things. A, E-Double, and then B, that song, because it's a classic slow jam, quiet storm joint. It's a classic players anthem in the club up with the Biggie. And then it's a classic mean mug Keith Murray joint. I'm just like, I want to flip this. I'm like, what if I flip this like into like a up-tempo R&B, a piano, Afro vibe? So I went home and I did that. And I originally thought I was just going to make an edit. So I took the sample and I, sped it up, started putting the Afro drums in. Then I used the stem separator. I took the bass line out. I put the log drum bass in and a synth bass. I started feeling really good. I'm just like, what if I replay everything? Took the synths out, replayed the synths. I replayed the Rhodes. Then I Googled quickly what synths they were using back then, pulled up the virtual instrument proximities of that, but I didn't want it to sound like theirs. So I pulled up the sound and then I started finding sounds that sound similar and then trying to mix, effects and stuff. I wanted to have its own texture once I started down this rabbit hole. And before you know it, I just have the Isley a cappella on top of a cover. And I'm like, well, I've gone this far. I need to find someone to re-sing it. This was 2 years ago. And it's sad. I called my boy Hagler, who's a producer, who you should get on here. Hagler's done like a bunch of Drake records, he's fire, a couple Bryson Tiller records. But that's my young producer. My young producer that's gone on to, I'm so proud of him. He's a monster. But I called Hagler and I'm just like, who do you know that sings falsetto, male? And we were trying to get this guy that's actually from Vancouver, and that didn't work out. And then I just got busy with life, and then the song sat on my hard drive. And then top of the year this year, I do this every year. I go through like stuff that I haven't finished. And I loaded that one up and I was just like, man, this still slaps. I need to finish this. So I called Glenn Lewis because he was working on a record and him and I have been in the studio doing a bunch of stuff. And I called Glenn and I'm like, Glenn, who do you know who can sing a beautiful falsetto? And he's like, Ray Robinson. I'm like, yes, why did I think of Ray Robinson? And so, a week goes by, whatever. I'm bullshitting, talking with Cardi. I'm like, Cardi, who can sing a beautiful falsetto male? He's like, oh, Ray Robinson all day. I'm like, you too? He's like, yeah. Remember, they didn't know that I had this conversation with each of them, but they both said the same person. I'm like, okay, cool. Call up Ray. I'm like, hey, two two legends in the city said, "You're the guy for beautiful male falsetto." And he's like, explained to him the song, sent it to him. He's like, "Yo, this slaps." I'm like, "You can do it?" He's like, "Yeah." He sent back the vocals, and I was just like, he owned it. He made it his own. You know, you're not going to outsing Ronald Isley. You know what I mean? So you have to do something different. And that's what was the approach with the cover. I'm like, I can't do what E-Double already did. I can't do what Biggie already did. I can't do what the Isley. I got to do something different. I want to make it its own. And those are usually my favorite covers. Like when someone does a cover and it's not what you expect and it's its own thing. And yeah, when he sent back the vocals, because I was like, "You want to record at my spot?" He's like, "I got a little rig." He's like, "If you don't think the vocals are good, you can re-record them at your spot." He sent the vocals. I'm like, "Bro, this is good to go." And like I mix a lot of my stuff, but if I stay too long with a record, I hand it off to somebody else. So I sent it to my boy Moose, and he mixed it. I've been 2 years and a million sessions with this record. I'm just like, I'm not going to be objective. You know, I don't want my record to sound like a demo, right? So I gave it to Moose, and he sent it back, and yeah, sent it off to mastering, and here we are, Between the Sheets, Ray Robinson. You know, like the music I'm making now is more intentional to go along with the DJing. I'm trying to stay more party formatted stuff, just simply for the fact that there isn't a lot of, I would love to do like some more underground stuff, but there isn't an outlet for me to go DJ a bunch of underground hip hop parties coast to coast or across the planet. You know, more up tempo stuff, you know, 105 to 130 BPM. There's tons of room there, and there's tons of different genres that I'm very interested in. And I really love Afro and Amapiano. I find the vibes, you know, if you go to an Afro party or you go to an Amapiano party, just look at the people's faces. Everybody's smiling. It's a joyful experience, and I'm really connecting with that. I really love the production in that stuff. I'm still making a lot of R&B, still making a lot of hip hop. That's always home, but I'm over there right now, and this is kind of like the perfect spot with all three. Right? It's still R&B, still a little sprinkle of hip hop in there, but it's definitely Afro and Ama. And you know, I got to reach out to some of my favorite remixers and editors, and I sent them the joints to remix. So I'm looking forward to getting their takes on it, because that's one thing I've learned over the last little while. Like, you can have a hot record, and I really believe in this record. I think it's gonna go. And even some of my friends who I played it for that are DJs, they're like, this is gonna go. And when I think about all the hot records, they always have hot remixes. You know what I mean? The hot records will spawn a hot remix. So I wanted to get on that early. I think that's also going to push the record, right? It's going to maybe push it into spots that I couldn't have seen, right? And maybe those remixes are going to connect with people that I wouldn't have connected with. And maybe, you know, they might be interested in checking out other stuff that DJ Agile has done. So yeah, I can't wait for people to hear some of the remixes. I don't want to say all the names and be a name dropper, but if you listen to this podcast or you watch this podcast, these are people that you would be interested in hearing their edits and remixes. So I can't wait for it.
Excellent. I'm excited for it too. I'm going to ask one more song.
Sure.
Starfish and Coffee, Prince.
Oh, Starfish and Coffee. For me, that record is Nice and Smooth, because when I heard No Delayin' from Nice and Smooth the first time, I was like, is that a Prince sample? That's the first thing that went through my head. And then the drums hit before like I could really process, right? And the bass hit so heavy, right? Hey, yo, kicking Ricky Rhymes. You know what I mean? And I was just like, I'm in. Because back then I had these blockers on that, you don't sample Prince. You don't sample Michael Jackson. And the Nice and Smooth samples Prince. Nas samples Michael Jackson for It Ain't Hard to Tell. There's no rules in sampling. It's like, how do you flip it? And that helped chisel down those walls. So every time I hear Starfish and Coffee, I think of Nice and Smooth. I think of that first Nice and Smooth album.
Same here, but I will admit my ignorance. When I heard Nice and Smooth, I was a big fan, and I was really young at the time. I didn't know it was a Prince song.
See, it's a gateway, right? That's what hip hop does, man. It's gateway.
This is the story of my life, and now I listen to Starfish and Coffee much more than I do Nice and Smooth these days. But that's just where I am.
Yeah. I mean, there's nothing wrong with letting Nice and Smooth dap you up and get you into the club, and now you're in the club and it's all Prince every day, all day. That sounds like a good club.
I like how you put it. You've gone through all these phases of your career and you're doing better than ever. I love to see it. If you were to be successful in the next 10 years and whatever success means to you, what would have happened?
I think just like being happy with the wins, like whatever those wins are, little wins, big wins, a bunt, a home run, a triple, single, just being happy with the wins, you know what I mean? And recognizing the wins. I think that's where I am. Like, you know, I've done almost all the things I thought I wanted to do at various levels. And I'm still here. This is my 27th year doing music full time. It's still strange when I say that. I mean, that's so crazy. That's crazy to me, right? 27 years and I'm still here and I'm still excited about music. Like I'm still ravenous. I stream on Twitch every Monday. It's called New Music Mondays. And I play all the new stuff that comes out on Fridays. And me and everybody that's on the Twitch, it's not really DJ. I do like a little set to start, but it's more like a conversation. Like I'll play the records and then we talk about whether we like the record or not, what we like about the record. And, you know, the chat will go crazy. They might roast me because they think they're like, bro, you're tripping. How do you like this record? And I'm like, I think this record's dope. They're like, this is trash, or vice versa. They'll be like, oh, this is great. I'm like, this is trash. It's a conversation. And that's what music is, right? It's a conversation, right? And the fact that I'm still excited about new music and discovering new music, discovering new artists, I hope that never goes away. And I think when that goes away, that's when it's time for me to leave music. So, you know, the next 10 years, I really hope I'm still doing these things. Maybe slow down on some of the parties because, you know, I'm starting to push some numbers up in there. It'd be nice to spend more time with my family. But producing, that will never stop. As long as I have ears, I'll be producing. And then learning new tools, man. This decade, my goal is to, like, as I said, I'm a terrible piano player. And I'd like this decade to finish. And I'm an average piano player. That would be the goal. And then maybe pick up a new instrument. Like, you know, there was in my mid-20s, I was teaching myself how to play bass, but it was shredding my fingers, something terrible that I didn't like. So maybe I'll man up and try to do that again. Because I think making beats and playing bass is like, you know, I love playing the synth bass, but there's something about, you know, the slides and the slapping and the popping with a bass guitar. And one of my friends who will remain nameless but is in proximity to me right now, he was a bass player, and I hear his joints and I hear when he's playing bass, and I'm like, fuck, I need to really get on that. So it's really about adding on and staying hungry, right? Staying hungry, staying humble, and just, you know, like music is an adventure and it's an education. And if I can just, you know, keep learning and keep on the adventure, I think that's the win for me for the next 10 years.
I see nothing but wins, happiness, and success for you. Appreciate your time, brother.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Shom. And keep this pod going. And please, E-Double, if you're listening, you need to do this pod, E-W. You're an awesome speaker, and people need to hear your stories.
Yeah, no doubt. All right. Peace, brother.
Peace.
Just give me 30 seconds of your time. Firstly, a huge thank you for checking out the show. This started off as an idea in my mind to see the growth and the support from the beat digging community from around the world has been fantastic. Secondly, if you support what we do here, take a moment and join the 19% of listeners and subscribe on this app. It makes a huge difference. And my promise to you is to grow this show to make it even more of what you love. More guests, more interesting conversation, more beat digging knowledge. We appreciate your support. Peace.